Hi, I'm Michael Wargo, team pilot with Precision Aerobatics and Hobbyking, and I'm really excited about today's video because I've been waiting a while to shoot it. What I needed was a really severe crosswind. And generally, you know, we don't go out flying when it's predicted to be that windy, but the wind came up really good today, and I'm anxious to do a video showing everybody why they should not be fearful of the wind. One of the reasons we should not be so fearful of the wind is whenever your plane is flying forward, even with no wind, technically there's wind going over the wings. So any additional wind, if the plane is facing toward the wind, is beneficial. It keeps the plane a little more buoyant, and those of us who fly turbine jets know that a lot of times we really like to fly and land with a little headwind because it slows us down a little bit. So the wind enables us to slow the plane down and basically fly with less forward speed, which in some ways is a little more controllable. The disadvantages to the wind are the plane buffets around a little bit, okay? And that is a definite disadvantage, but unless you're a foot off the ground, doesn't really matter. So if you're at altitude and the aerobatics are looking a little ugly, you can't fly straight, that's just the way it is. And that's why I don't like flying into the wind, is only because my maneuvers don't look as precise. But this video is predominantly for people who are fearful of the wind and they don't want to fly and they don't want to land. They're very afraid of landing in the wind. But I'm going to show you today why landing in the wind, you shouldn't have any fear. And we're going to do it with the worst possible wind, which is a dead crosswind. So let's go up and we're going to do some aerobatics and we're going to show you how to land effectively in the wind. This plane was my choice for heavy wind because with the double wings and side area, this thing is most heavily affected by the wind. But really all the wind does to you that's a big disadvantage is it really just pushes the tail around and it changes the direction of forward for you. So if you want to fly down the runway and the wind's blowing across, obviously it wants to weather vane a little bit, but it's not as big a disadvantage as you think. Okay, so now obviously on takeoff, the plane is going to want to weather vane. No way to avoid it. You can either start on the far side of the runway just to give yourself a little more leeway, or you can just hold a little, in this case, a little left rudder, just as you're getting off the ground. And what we're going to do is, instead of that long, slow takeoff that I normally do, what I'm going to try to do is maybe take advantage of this wind. The wind is blowing right in its face and sideways, so I'll leave the ground really fast, which is always a good idea when it's windy. And instead of, you know, trying to do some precision, I'll do something that flips the airplane and looks a little better. So here we go. Little elevator, we're going to go up right away. And you see how fun that maneuver looked because of the wind. The wind right now is my friend. As I'm rolling, that wind is going to help keep that plane aloft. And as long as I stay into the wind, look how slow I can fly because of the wind. When I'm flying in the wind, another tip is stay away from precision maneuvers because they tend to blow around and you won't look as good. But tumbling, of course, tumbling looks awesome. And again, notice I'm going right into the wind. I'm flying it right at me. And these are just all nice aerobatic maneuvers that are taking advantage of the wind. Okay, this is a maneuver I absolutely love, and it can only be done and look this good into the wind. I'm going to go straight away from me, in this case, right away from the wind, up, and push over. Look how cool that maneuver looks. And now I'm in a harrier, and it's almost falling straight down, literally straight down. The wind is gusting and the plane's staying fairly stable because I'm completely facing the wind. And you know, even this maneuver looks great because the wind catches it and it actually went backwards. If you watch it again. Now as long as you keep the plane into the wind, the wind effect is pretty nominal and it's beneficial. Another really nice maneuver into the wind is a death slide. We go up high, and then we hold knife edge and just let it fly straight down on knife edge, and of course catch it before it gets to the bottom. Now I'm going to show you a disadvantage with the wind, which is if I want to do that nice knife edge down the runway, it's pretty predictable that the wind is going to be blowing it away from me. And because I'm flying crosswind, it's going to fight me the whole time. So I'm going to set it up for knife edge. And as long as I hold a little elevator, basically it will kind of stay, but you can see the wind fighting me so much. Might want to keep a little more speed. But as you can see, all that's really happening to the aircraft is it's just pushing the tail around. I'm flying in one direction, the tail looks like it's flying in another direction, but it's really not. Probably my favorite thing to do in heavy wind is, obviously for more advanced pilots, but it's a rolling harrier into the wind or a tick-tock harrier into the wind. So if you can see now, everything becomes a little more buoyant. But you can see how many rolls I get in such a small space. I'll try that again. A descending harrier into the wind is just awesome. Look how many rolls you can get, and the plane is just staying stationary in the sky. And just let it fall down. It's a little hard to keep the direction, and that's a skill set you need to learn. But look how nice this looks. And the plane is almost no forward speed and just rolling. And just get as low as you want. And there's even very simple things that look great into the wind, and that is an elevator. Watch, I'm going to let this plane just come straight down. Let it find its own way. Don't even, almost don't have to touch the rudder unless you want to, adjust it a little bit, which I am. But look at this. The plane is literally falling straight down. Barely any throttle. The higher I lift the nose, the more it's going to stay stationary. Wow, I can even land this way. Let's go up again. And that landing is only possible because of this wind. There's an alternate landing like this that's pretty interesting. Watch, we're going to come down in an inverted, and then I'm going to pop it right close to the ground and just turn the wings around and land straight. But as you can see, I am literally coming down vertical. Of course, I need to go forward a little further, but until I hit the runway. But right before the ground, just going to roll it, and we can drop it in and land it again. All right, let's go back up. Crosswind landings are kind of fun, or crosswind takeoff rather. Another landing I love into a heavy wind when it's down the runway especially is like a loop to that nice harrier landing. You'll see I'll just come right down again. And all these landings are happening, vertical with no forward speed. The cross the runway takeoff, in this case, it's a very light airplane. I'm in the middle of the runway and I will be up and out, and it's a really cool takeoff because I go sideways and immediately pull into a U, kind of like an Immelman. So a takeoff to an Immelman, watch how nice that looks. Straight up, straight out. And to me, because I'm doing all these maneuvers into the wind, nothing looks bad so far. Even stuff like this look pretty good. And you can look pretty precise if you're not trying to fly across the wind all the time. Another maneuver I really love, and of course it's not for everybody, of course, is that death dive landing to a harrier landing. But watch, we're just going to push the nose straight down and watch the wind help us. Straight down. And then we can just set it straight down like I did the others. Actually, I'm going to go around here. So the one thing I think everybody is interested in is how to land in the wind. And something that's really, really important landing into the wind is that you just calm down and let the plane do what it wants to do. I'm going to do a very normal landing. I'm coming across, I'm going to turn on base, come down the runway, but at this point, let the plane do exactly what it wants to do. I'm not touching it. Now you can see the plane is pretty much sideways, not hurting anything. It's flying forward, but it's sideways. And now right at the ground, I'll just goose the rudder just a little bit right before it touches down. It's very easy. You see the wind take that wing over? Fear not. Now, if you can angle across the runway a little bit, that's even better. So I'll start right there and just fly at an angle. And right now, I probably don't have to do anything and it will touch down normally. But what we're looking for is how to correct for high wind. And the most ironic part about it is my suggestion is don't correct. Don't do anything. Just let it come down. Watch, the plane's going to just land on its own. I'm not doing anything. I'm starting on this side because the plane's going to be drifting that way. And right before the ground, I'm going to goose the rudder a little bit. As you can see, one landing after another is completely normal, uneventful, even in a high crosswind. Here we go again. I'm flying straight. Now the plane is weather vaning on its own. Little throttle, and I did almost nothing. I have to admit the wind's calmed down just a little bit over the last few minutes, but I'll see if the wind picks up a little bit more. All right. Now I'm going to try and show you some of the things that you really need to pay attention to when you are in the wind. That is, again, when you're up and out, the wind can't do anything but buffet you around a little bit. That's the worst that could really happen and make you not look like you're flying as straight and pretty as you normally do. But if you decide that you want to bring this plane down low, there's several things you really have to pay attention to. And that is, if I'm going to do a rolling harrier in a circle, the downwind leg, it's critical that you add power, because if ever the plane changes direction, well, you need additional lift. So as I turn here and I get on that downwind leg, I do not have the same amount of lift, so the plane is going to want to fall. The speed of the roll is going to change. You just have to be aware of it, and just keep vigilant watching it. You just have to keep a little extra special attention to the nose. I'm going to go down here, and here's it initially rolling to the downwind. You see how much faster everything is happening, and the plane changes. But as long as I'm good with the throttle, as I get back into the wind again, everything becomes a lot more manageable. And I guess one of my other favorite things to do when it's windy is hovering and torque rolling, either hovering alone or hovering with a torque roll and letting the plane drift with the wind. It looks really cool, and on those really interesting days, it's really fun when the plane is just traveling all by itself. So I'm going to pull the plane up into a hover, and now you can see the plane just drifting and moving on its own. It's always a little, there you go. It's always a little more challenging, but you can see the wind just blowing the plane away. And I think that looks really cool. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get the torque roll started because the wind wants to just keep the wings level. And it's a little stronger than the torque of the motor, which is how it torque rolls. So let me see if I can kind of get it going here and have it torque rolling at the same time. I didn't say it was easy. There we go. Now we are going to do a couple normal landings just to help show how the wind is going to weather vane the plane. And like I said, we do not want to make adjustments. I'm going to set it up as normal, let it weather vane, and just watch it. And as it gets close, touch the rudder over a little bit. See, the wind was so strong it wanted to lift it back up again. We're going to shoot yet another landing. Again, just landing with the crosswind, which is coming up pretty good right now. Just let it do whatever it wants to do. It's just flying as it wants. And now I'm just going to touch the rudder as it gets close, and we're down. This is probably my 10th landing, and none of them were eventful, none of them were bouncy or hard or anything. And the only thing I can tell you is I just did not panic. All I did was let the plane fly itself to the ground. That extra wind is helpful. It's keeping it aloft. See? And we'll watch the plane come around and then just tuck the rudder over a little bit, right? Okay, by accident, okay? I was just trying to show you how to you know, use the rudder to make the plane, you know, straighten out. And I hit it a little too early. You know, I'm a million miles from perfect, that's for sure. So I did it too early. But coincidentally, that showed you exactly why you do not want to adjust the plane on its way down. Because if I was trying to adjust the rudder when the wind was trying to do the opposite, those are the types of things that happen when you try and adjust. If I would have just let it go, it would have landed perfectly. Let's try it again and I'll show you what I mean. I'm coming down and it's weather vaning, right? If I try and straighten it out, I'm causing all kind of problems, potentially. So I'm not going to try and use the rudder to straighten the aircraft. I'm going to let it just do what it wants to do, because as soon as I add rudder, I'm adding a lot of instability pointlessly. See, look at the rudder, is making everything difficult. Now that I'm using the rudder, I literally can't land it. And all I'm doing is pointing the rudder to help face the runway a little better. There I'm going. And I'm trying to use the rudder, and it's making me unstable. And of course, it's, you know, it's turning a lot worse. And here's one more try with no rudder whatsoever, and just let the plane do what it wants to do. The wind is blowing, I'm just letting it come in. That was no rudder whatsoever. So the moral of the story is, do not panic. Let the plane do what it wants to do, and you'll make it down to the ground safely every time. All right, we're going to do the same thing with an EDF jet. We're going to see how it lands in high winds, and some of the adjustments I make when it's windy. But you'll see, because of its speed and everything else, it'll almost not be noticeable when I'm out. You might see a little buffeting or something like that, but for the most part, the flight will be normal. And the only thing we really have to pay attention to is just what I did on the aerobatic plane, is don't overcompensate when you're low to the ground, because if you add any rudder, you know, you're at risk of twisting the airplane or you know, compromising how stable it is, which we just don't want to do. Other adjustment is I generally take off a little faster, because a real gust or something like that could be a problem. So I kind of leave the ground a little quicker. That's just a general precaution, because, you know, the only real danger is if you're really low to the ground, is, you know, where it could be a problem. Two other things: I do not use takeoff flaps, because it will be unnecessary, and when I'm landing, this is important. If the wind is really heavy, do not use full flaps, because it will compromise your stability when you get slow. It will slow you down a little too much, possibly, and it's just not necessary, which is the other big deal. So here we go. Here we go. Nice, long, smooth takeoff. Let the plane just rise. Perfect. Pull the gear. We're going to do a nice little U-turn back to the runway, and we are going to fly straight down the runway as low as we're comfortable. I love doing these very low, and most of the time it's not that hard. So there's a nice low pass. A lot of wind buffeting it around. We're going to make a nice U coming out. Now we're going to set up for a landing. My power is actually over. So we're going to drop our gear. We're going to set flaps at half. We got a lot of wind, so I'm probably not going to go to full flaps today. But we're going to make a nice turn on base. Starting relatively low. Turn towards the center of the runway, nose pointed at me, just the way my training videos do. And now we're going to find the center of the runway. It's crabbing a little bit, but we're going to hold it off and have a nice landing. Flaps are down. We're going to take a nice long approach and do exactly what we did in the other cases, which is just let the wind do with it what it wants. And as it's coming in,